there, TNA fam. How's it going for today? We're back again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans, and today I want to talk about whether being predictable is good. Now, I do think that being somewhat predictable sometimes is good, because of course, you can see some things coming a mile away sometimes, and doing the predictable thing is just, well, that was what we were doing, so, why are we going to pivot and change all of our plans or whatever else it is, just to pivot and just to, we got those marks, we got the marks, whoop-de-friggin-do. It's not just about, it shouldn't be about getting people or getting the marks or whatever, or it shouldn't be about that. I understand that was, a key part of, the industry at one point, just getting people, being like, oh, you thought you were going to get this? Oh, no, you're not, type thing. At a certain point, that's your audience. And yes, there's a thing to say about, you're trying to get people invested and trying to get that heat and get that passionate fan base riled up and getting them right, okay, cool, we're bound and determined to see this or bound and determined to see that, and then you say, oh no, we're not going to give it to you. At a certain point, you've got to give it to them, because, and especially with TNA, but especially right now, we're looking at this AMC debut era. Perhaps I said this before, but I don't really recall, but I think, unfortunately, in some ways, it is somewhat predictable to think that, hey, this is our big night, or this is our AMC debut, or whatever, all of this stuff. This is our best chance to make a really good impression, so therefore it might be, a little bit, predictable to put the belt onto Santana. I said this before, about, what could you do with this title, especially right now, where you're okay, we're going into Genesis, 2 days after, and I said, I feel like you've been building to this triple threat for a while. I think, Nick Nemeth, I think something that I kind of tripped over when I was reading through the notes or reading through the spoilers or whatever it was a few weeks back, was that I read that Nick Nemeth said he was going to cash in, and I assumed, erroneously, that meant he was cashing in at Genesis for some reason. But I think the way that he said it meant that he says he's going to cash it in on the AMC debut. Now, what it is, when it is, how it is, or whatever, and I said this as well, that you can't trust anybody, obviously, no matter what they sort of say. So you've got to think okay, cool, right, we know what we've got with Mike Santana, but are they going to pull a fast one on us and have Nick Nemeth win the belt or whatever else? So that's, I guess, the not the crux of things, but it's the crux of things here of yeah, we don't want to be too predictable, but we want people to keep tuning in or whatever. But at a certain point, like I said, this point perhaps, you need to give the fans what they want to see and what they need to see. Because, again, I said this before in another video, I can't remember which one, but and a lot of people have this perception of TNA, especially in the last, couple of years and whatnot, but overall as well, but especially in the last couple of years, when you didn't really pull the trigger on Joe Hendry, perhaps when you should have done. You didn't really pull the trigger on Mike Santana, perhaps when you should have done. All of that stuff. And I know, before that, they had a couple of really good times where they crowned people, and it felt like maybe that wasn't the right decision. Perhaps Sami Callihan winning the belt, but then again, it was a good thing for it to be on the debut episode, but it was kind of a little bit awkward that he just lost to Brian Cage just before that, or whatever else it was. So it is a little bit boo, why was this not just on the pay-per-view, or whatever else it was? Although it was kind of good, because it was oh, okay, this cool cage match or whatever else it is and all that sort of stuff. And a great first main event for the first Access, broadcast and whatnot of that back then. I don't even remember that, man. Perhaps that's because I was mostly watching through the TNA Plus app, or no, I don't even think I was watching through TNA Plus app. I must have been watching through like YouTube or something at that point. I don't know, but yeah, it's some way I was watching it. No matter what it was, I don't know what it was at the time now, but whatever. But yeah, that's kind of the opposite in some ways of like what you would have like kind of expected in some ways, but because it's like you're always like in a theory like going, okay, cool, we're gonna have this babyface come up and do their big thing or whatever, and that's why you've made this match. You want people to get invested, you want people to be like, oh shit, okay, cool, we are tuning in to see this, and this is hopefully what we want to see, where Mike Santana finally gets his dues and whatnot and holds the belt for more than a month or whatever it is. I've said before as well, it's like baby faces are hard because like you're trying to keep them in public's like, or the fans' mind of being like, no, this guy, he hasn't got his dues, or he hasn't got there really yet, or he still deserves it or whatever. You don't want people to ever be like, oh man, this guy again or whatever, or losing interest or whatever else it is. It's like, yes, you can have other shiny new toys or whatever else it is, so to speak, or whatever. But, like, saying, oh, yeah, but by that time that somebody else is, like, on par with Santana, we will have done enough things with him for him to feel like, oh, yes, we've really established him, or really he's at that level, and now he can help bring up some of the other people or whatever else it is to that level. So again, it is what it is, but yeah, like, you're looking for that thing that these guys will bring to the show. So it's like, yes, that is somewhat predictable to say, oh yeah, but that's perhaps, and this is like forward thinking, like I said before, I didn't really agree with the whole two people win the Courier shot, but it worked out well. I think it worked out well for Kazarian because it was like, oh, okay, like, here we are with him winning the belt, and I think that would help build to this moment. So that's like why they did it, and I think, I don't know, it's really tough to say whether they should have done it sooner or whatever they should have or shouldn't have done or whatever it is, but still, it is what it is. This is what they've done, and this is how they've done it, and this is why they've done it, and all that stuff. So it is what it is. You can't change history. You can do all the what-if moments or whatever else it is and go down that rabbit hole or whatever. But, saying, hey, we're going to do the predictable thing isn't bad. Saying, hey, we're going to do the predictable thing and Santana's going to win. Cool, great. That's awesome. Like, when something is predictable and the fans want to see it, or somewhat think it's somewhat predictable and the fans want to see it, it's like, yeah, but we still want to see it. The fans don't want, like, there are times to be like, let's be a little bit unpredictable, let's do something different, let's think outside the box, or let's do something else, or let's build somebody else up at the same time to help, in the future with this. But the thing is, it's like, there are times that you've just got to say, no, this is the time not to do that, this is not the time to, and you can still do the surprises in other ways or whatever, but, or not be predictable in some ways other than this. But like, again, when you need to say, no, we need to do this because this is our new era, and we've got to show people, no, this is a new era, and this is what the show's going to be about. It's not going to be about Kazarian anymore. Kazarian is awesome. Kazarian has done a great job. He's a great, awesome heel. He can still have a few more months run in that top sort of spot there for a while and help bring up some other guys. But his time as being one of the top, especially being the champion, and kudos to him as well. Like, I don't want to take anything away from him or anything like that, because he's freaking earned it in the many years that he's worked and put in and whatnot, and he's bet on himself and all this other stuff. It's amazing. So I don't want to take anything away from him, but it's not his time anymore. It's not the time for going backwards. It's not the time to be like looking to 2010 where they were like, hey, we're bringing in all these ex-WWE guys and all these ex-WCW guys or whatever else that really can't go. And I know Kazarian can still go to a certain extent, but still, like, it's not his time anymore. It's not time to be with guys like Eric Young or whoever else, whatever else. It's time to say, okay, maybe they can do stuff in that mid-card or upper mid-card or whatever else to help elevate other people, but realistically, they're not here to be the guy anymore. They're here to help us build the new people that will be... Like, I would love to see Slater and Kazarian. That would be cool, honestly, in my opinion as well. You know, to see Kazarian... Like, that might even be Kazarian's, like, backup B plan or whatever else it is, or whatnot. Whatever it is, I don't know. Where it's like, he gets his rematch, and then he's like, I want another rematch, or I want another rematch. And he's like, no, you don't get it, because you've had your rematch. That's it. You go to the back of the line, or whatever. And then he might be like, well, what about the X Division title? I'll win the X Division title. I've done that before. Give me a shot at the X Division title. Well, you can start challenging people to get a number one contendership there, or whatever. And then he goes through and does that, or whatever. And then, you know, I don't know whether he should win it. That becomes the question, doesn't it? Because it's like, if he was to win it, then you start saying, well, he's got that option C. That's kind of a cool story or a cool moment or a cool thing in some ways. But, like, realistically, in some ways, it would be like, well, maybe we should save that for somebody that actually needs to be elevated. Kazarian doesn't need to be elevated, realistically. Like, you could find ways to build him back into that title picture more easily, because he still has, like, a level of believability or a level of heat that people would go, oh, no, I can see them in a feud or whatever else it is. Or you can build up the stories the right way, or with the right matches or whatever else it is, and the right circumstances in the right way to make it work. I just think, you know, like, somebody like Slater or somebody that's not on that level is like somebody that you actually want to give the chance to say, hey, I just beat Kazarian, who was like recently the former world champion, and I've beat Rich Swann, another former world champion, and I've beat Moose, another former world champion, you know, like, so I've beat all these former world champions, and there's basically no one left for me to fight in this division. So, hey, you know what? I'm going to call my shot with the X Division option C and challenge the World Heavyweight Champion. Now, that still might be 3, 4, 5, 6 months away or whatever it is, and he's probably not going to win that world title. But again, I still think that could be a good thing, especially, like, it might not be a good thing because, again, like, you've got to think of, like, where's the X Division at? Because you can't just leave the X Division empty and it be like, oh, okay, there's no one really to carry that division. You've got to have somebody to carry every division, kind of thing. That's the thing. Like, so, again, but whatever. Eventually, like, that could become, like, somewhat predictable. It had been, like, in some ways very predictable, because people, like, always felt like it always happens, but it hasn't happened for like 6 years or something. I can't remember. Whatever it's been. But yeah, it hasn't happened in a long time. The last person to cash in was Kazarian, and that was like a couple of years ago against Josh Alexander. You know, that was the last time that the X Division title had been cashed in, and then it hadn't happened for like another 4 or 5 years before that. So, like, so much for it happening all the freaking time. It happened, like, twice in, like, a decade or something, or whatever it was. Just over a decade. Like, yes, it happened a lot in the early days or whatever it was, once a year, but that was like when it was like, oh yes, you get to challenge once a year if you have the belt, type thing, and get to give it up or whatever. But yeah, no, I think like being unpredictable most of the time is good, because like you don't like, yes, like my job or what I do here is trying to predict things or whatever, and storylines and angles and things that make sense, or you start saying, okay, obviously you're doing something with these two individuals that you're showing on my screen. Sometimes these things, they fall apart or they fall away or they just, don't really come together or whatever else it is. Or it's a tease for later or whatever else it is. But it's like, oh yes, it just didn't happen because that person got injured or that person had a baby or that person left the company or was, they went to WWE, they went to AEW, or whatever else the circumstances were. So we just didn't get to the point of saying, oh yes, this is what we're going to do and where we're going to go and whatever else. But it is what it is. So too bad, so sad, whatever. It was a thing that we wish we could have done, but it just didn't happen or whatever. So yeah, but again, like, you can't just keep swerving people. I understand that there's not been many, like, Vince Russo swerves. Oh, it's just a swerve, bro. Oh, swerve, the swerve that swerves the bro. All that. There's not been, like, that kind of, like, level of, like, we just swerve and swerve and swerve all the time, where it's like no one knows what's going on or whatever else it is, and you can't keep the story straight or whatever it is. There have been decisions that it's like, well, maybe they should have made this decision sooner, or maybe they should have taken a month off, or whatever it was, this or that, or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, like, they made those decisions, so they have to live with it. And that's like being somewhat unpredictable in a way as well. It's like, oh, we're just going to take a month off, but that doesn't help you. Like, it doesn't completely cripple you or hurt you too much, but again, you have to be there just about 52 weeks out of the year. Like, that's what's expected of you, but again, sometimes saying, oh, we had to do something, or there was other things on the go, whatever, it doesn't matter. What you should have done and what you could have done should have been like, okay, and like, again, even just the littlest of little things, okay, we're gonna tape some more stuff in the studio, but it's gonna be more about building what's next, not just about like reliving what happened. It's not just about what happened, it's about what's next. Like, that would have been a lot better, being like, okay, at least we have a direction or whatever. And I know I'm not going to go into it again or whatever, but just saying that, like, even if you're like seeing things on TV and you think you can, like, or whatever, you assume you know where this is heading, like, or whatever, you can feel like, oh, okay, maybe that was just a little tease or whatever else it was, if it's not on next week or whatever it is. But they haven't forgotten about it, or they haven't, like, they're not dumb. They're going to get back to it, maybe, or whatever. And then if they tease it in a few more weeks, then it's like, oh, okay, yes, it was a tease. We're definitely still going in this direction or whatever. You can see it. You can start to see, okay, this person over here is gaining momentum. That person over there is gaining momentum. Okay, where's that going? How's that going to go into the next thing? Or whatever. There was a lot of chatter about, like, whether AJ, when he's appearing, is going to say, hey, I'm going to have a match in TNA. That's unpredictable. I think at this point, you can start saying, is he going to have a match or isn't he? I think if he's going to have a match, awesome. Don't keep teasing us with, like, maybe he will, maybe he won't. You know, I think at this point, you've got to say yes or no. WWE, are we gonna let us have AJ for one match over here against somebody, whatever, and then whatever he can retire with you, and that's not what I want. But like, if you guys want him to retire over there, that's up to you. But if you don't want us to have a match with him, fine. But stop dangling this damn carrot in our face and saying, oh, maybe you'll get to have a match with him. Maybe he'll make an appearance. Maybe. And obviously saying, oh, yes, if you're saying, oh, well, we're trying to save it for the biggest and best and baddest and whatever else time. Okay, cool. That's great. That's fine. I understand that. But it's like, don't be just teasing us with these things. Stop, being like, oh, you might get this. No, you won't. No, you won't. Because we're not upholdent to you. We shouldn't be upholdent to WWE. For many reasons. But one of them being, like, they have basically all the leverage. We don't have very much, like, even saying, oh, now we might be having a bit more leverage with our TV slot or whatever. Yeah, but it's still not the level of what WWE's leverage is. So they have all the leverage of what they can do. But TNA should say, hey, look, the partnership that we have had, whatever we've done, it's been, like I said this several times before, it's been great. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. No, disrespect to you, but like, at a certain point, we want something out of this. And you might say, oh, well, they got the TV deal out of this, or they got more eyes on them out of this. But then again, WWE does need TNA, or it feels like they need TNA because they are like, oh, we're pretty worried about AEW. And that's like none of our business, like in some ways. Like, yes, AEW is there and we have to compete with them, but we shouldn't, if we can't stand on our own merits in some ways, it's like, well, what does that really mean? We shouldn't just be kissing up to WWE. We should be saying, okay, we're going to be our own little engine that can, and we're going to focus on our guys, not your guys. Obviously that storyline or whatever, that angle with the NXT Outlaws is still going, and I feel like it's still going to be going for another 6 months or so, whatever, at least. But we'll have to wait and see. Yeah. But yeah, like, again, I just don't want them to be like, well, maybe you'll get something. Maybe you'll get something. No. At a certain point, no. That's it. We're not, putting up with you saying, dangling that carrot in our face and saying, well, maybe we'll give you something else. Like, even though AJ's retired or whatever else it is. That's really what we wanted. Like, that's the number one thing that we wanted. So, you saying, hey, all right, we will give it to you. All right, cool. One night only, or whatever it is, or maybe a couple of nights only, or whatever it is, a couple of promos, or whatever else it is. He can have, like, all these other matches on your TV show to build it up if you want. We don't care. But as long as we get him for one match, that's what we want. And this is, I think, the match that people want the most is Leon versus AJ. I think that is what people want now. And, like, that's why, again, I feel like you've got to start, okay, cool. Either way, even if you weren't trying to build Leon into that world title division, I feel like it's like, okay, now we've got to say, okay, cool, build him up, really build him up. Even have him have matches against, like, Matt and Jeff Hardy in singles matches or something like that. I don't know. Maybe they'll have to be TV matches because that's all the Hardys can really do, I think. They wouldn't be able to have, like, pay-per-view level matches, singles matches against Leon. So I don't think that they would go for that, but then again, maybe they will, I don't know. But then again, they've been such a tag team for the most of the time that they've been in TNA in this last run, so it's like, well, why why try at, to put them in that position or whatever else it is. That's just not smart. We know that they are limited now and that's okay, but you shouldn't go out of your way to expose them or whatever else it is. And other people need to carry the load. So again, and maybe maybe they'll be in a different position by then, but we'll wait and see as well. But still, being predictable isn't just a bad thing. It isn't. But being like, the difference between being unpredictable and just being like chaotic or being not manipulative, but like somewhat manipulative or whatever, where it's just like, haha, we're trying to be so chaotic and so swervy and whatnot that nothing really makes sense. And again, it's just like, this is crap now. It's not a wrestling show. It's not, it's just a bunch of stuff that happens on TV, like, whatever. Like, you see some of these soap operas or whatever else it is, they're very, like, some of them are very outlandish, but some of them are actually quite okay, but, like, some of the stuff is just, like, overly, like, dramatic or whatever else it is. Some of the looks and the ways that people go about things or whatever it is just like, what the hell was, the thought here, like, they were told to go big or go home and they went as big as possible, which was just, it starts being like, not slapstick, but like, yeah, like almost a parody of itself in a way or whatever. But a lot of the storylines in those like soap operas are always like over the top as well. Like, certainly like saying, oh yes, we've got unique characters like Rosemary or whatever else it is, even though she's a lot less of a role in the company nowadays. It's like, yes, but she's like, you could almost do some more of that stuff that you did with her, like that the Hardys did, more of like the Rosemary otherworld sort of thing type stuff, like the that sort of thing, just do more of that with her. Like, I don't know what you're going to do with that, because it's like, are you actually going to build her up, like, and I don't know, like, yeah, it's tough, but she's like obviously a fixture of that division and everyone kind of has respect and admiration for everything that she's doing and done in that spot. And she's been in the same spot for a long time, realistically. She hasn't really done any, like, she's like challenged for the title a few times or whatever it's been. So they've built her up a few times, but nothing's really like eventuated, and there's been no real big storylines of late for her, and that sort of thing. So it's like, yeah, whatever. But still, I don't know. I'm still trying to think like about this debut, because like I think that's where people's like attention is the most. Like, I think obviously people know that Genesis is there and know that it exists, but like, since there's, like I said this before, like it's somewhat hurting Genesis, not a lot, but it is somewhat hurting it that you don't know what your main event is gonna be, like, going in. But that's also like a little bit unpredictable and a little bit like more exciting and more like, oh shit, anything could happen. If Santana wins this thing, well, what does that mean for this thing? What if Santana doesn't win? Well, we know that, hey, recently it was like, hey, this is my last chance or whatever. And so again, like, you're painting this picture in some ways of saying, no, this might be my last chance. I might not be, ready for this or whatever else. Maybe you'll go back to the back of the line, or maybe you won't even be in this company anymore or something. Surely Santana is signed for a long period of time still, and even if he's not, they've got to know, hey, this is our guy. This, even internally, not just saying from, AMC's perspective or whoever's perspective or whatever else it is. This is our guy. This has been our guy for a while. We know we've got to get him in this position. That might be a bit predictable to some people or whatever, but thing is, that's what we've got to do. This is the direction we've got to take. We had to take that direction of saying, let's put it on Kaz so that we can take it off Santana so that we can give it back to him on this big AMC debut, and then we'll go from there. And then you're like, well, we've got to mix things up. We've also got to have more for Santana to do. We can't just, move him on or whatever else it is or whatnot. And that sort of thing without challengers or without other things to go against or whatever. And that's why you've got Nick Nemeth. Even if you're saying, he cashes in this match at some point, and it is a triple threat in this match, perhaps. I don't know. Or whatever. Even if that is the case, you're still well, we still need to build to Genesis. Something needs to happen at Genesis with at least these three people. So again, even if we get to see some of that and Santana comes out on top or whatever else it is, or if, Nick Nemeth tries to run it in or whatever it is, that it's okay, we have some way of Santana, running out of the ring or whatever else it is, and he still has the belt, and they're left high and dry. Or I said this before with the whole Nick Nemeth and the NXT stuff. It's you can't really do that much more. Or again, maybe you could do something with Mara Shade. I don't know, but I always start to feel as well with that Mara Shade, Ryan Nemeth sort of thing. It's starting to be wearing a bit thin. And it's a bit I understand people might not want to see a intergender match. And I don't really think I want to see it all that much. I think the tag team match that they had a while back, I think that was okay. Mostly because you didn't have the women in there as much with the men. So it was a little bit more or the spots that you did have them in there with the men, it was a little bit more surprise out of nowhere sort of stuff, more so. They weren't just going toe to toe or whatever. It wasn't just that sort of thing. But yeah, I still think you shouldn't be doing those sorts of things for the most part, unless you're getting somebody to be they're underdog babyface type thing. But any which way, that's why, as I said, this is why you've put this quarter shot on Ryan Nemeth, or Nick Nemeth rather, sorry, is to add this extra element, to be is this the way it's going to go? Is that the way it's going to go? Is it going to go this way? Is it going to go that way? You're trying to have something feel oh yeah, cool, we know that this thing thus far is going this way, but is it going this way after this, or is it going that way after this, or is it going that way, this way, that way, whatever? You're trying to give the people a little bit okay, we've seen this, or we can see this thing here, or whatever. So we've got a lot to still look forward to, or whatever, or see in the future, or whatnot, whatever else it is. So again, we'll keep tuning in. There's still something to tune in to see. It's still going to be exciting. And that's why you've got to, not just saying, oh, well, we're loading up on WWE guys, but hey, people know Nick Nemeth. They know the Hardys. They know these fairly recognizable people, or recognizable names, or whatever else it is. So saying, hey, we're going to have them out there, and people are going to go, oh yeah, we forget Nick Nemeth's here, or whatever, Dolph Ziggler, the former Dolph Ziggler's here, and hey, we're going to have all these debuts again. It's not just going to be totally predictable of saying, hey, we know that he's going to come out. Yeah, but you don't know what's going to happen after that, and you don't know what's going to happen throughout the show, and who's going to debut, who's going to return, whatever else it is. There's always going to be these rumors or these ideas. Like I said, with Jericho, is that an option? I don't know. But like people, at least there's that buzz of like, oh, could this person be there? Could that person be there? Oh yeah, Killer Cross is on the indies. This person's on the indies. Could they pick up this person? Could they pick up that person? This is what we wanted to have happen, where it's like people are talking about TNA, not just in the light of, oh, TNA, you know, whatever, that old mentality, that old school stuff that's been around for so freaking long that it's ridiculous. But yeah, we want people to be like, oh, you know, TNA is not TNAing anymore. It's under, you know, a proper management, you know, or whatever. Maybe some of the stuff, you know, we go, oh, well, we didn't agree with that, but now look where we're going. You know, we got to the point that we needed to get to. And sometimes, you know, that's the thing. It's the thing to say, hey, this was the plan all along, you know, in a sense. And not just this was the plan, but this was the reason for the plan or whatever, you know. So fans will accept some things being like thrown at them out of left field or whatever, so to speak, like this came out of nowhere. What was this? If you pay it off right, if you say, okay, thank you so much for everything that you've done and paying attention and coming to see our show, we really appreciate it, or whatever else it is. Here's a reward. Cut the fans a break. You know we could stretch this. I said this before. Maybe it'd be good if you stretch it out. I don't know. That's a debatable topic, but I don't think it is now. I think, you know, I don't know why I didn't really twig onto it before, but now I don't think it's negotiable at all. So, and that's why I'm saying, is that somewhat predictable? I don't know, perhaps it is, but the opposite is also somewhat predictable, especially for TNA. They have not stuck the landing on a lot of these things. If you say, okay, no, we are gonna finally stick the landing on this thing. We've been trying to get the stink off this company for so freaking long, that this is what we've got to do. We cannot have more stink on this company, especially in our new era, especially in this new slot, because if we start stinking up the place from day one, and people are like, oh, it's the same fucking TNA again, they're TNAing again, they're going to tune out. They're not going to buy another ticket. They're not going to come to the more events in the future. This is the proving ground for this brand, for this show, for this company in the next however many years. It doesn't matter what they do in the next 3 years if they don't score this goal. They need to score this goal and land this friggin' thing and friggin' start going, okay, we've got to, you know, even if we're down the road a few more months or whatever else it is, we're going to put the belt on, I don't know, AJ Francis or somebody else or whatever else, or Eric Young, or maybe it'll go back on Kazarian, or maybe it'll go back on Nick Nemeth. I don't know. But again, and the fans aren't happy with that, at least like they'll be like, or even if it's on Mustafa Ali or somebody else, I don't know. You know, again, like, okay, but at least, you know, people will be like, well, we have whoever is going to upcome to Ali and protect, like I said before, with like the rematch with Santana and Ali, run that back. People want to see it again, run it back. I don't know whether that's the right time to put the belt on Ali, especially considering like it's only like a couple of months away or whatever it is. So I don't think it's the right time to do that. But again, you could say, let's at least think about running it back. You know, or maybe we'll run it back later in the year. I don't know. You know, run it back around, you know, Slammiversary or Bound for Glory or whatever. You know, you can still do that. You can still do it, you know, sometime later in next year or whatever else it is. So there's always the chance to do those things, not just be like, we were beholden to have to do it at Rebellion, or we're beholden to have to do it at sacrifice or whatever else that, you know, it is, or we have to do it in El Paso, or we have to do it here, or we have to do it there. No, you don't have to do it anywhere. But that's like, and you don't even have to do it, but I'm just saying that's a great angle to work back to with Santana. It's like, there's something you can do. Like with Kazarian right now, I did this with Danny Luna earlier in the last video, or whatever it was, that I was saying, who else is there for him to face, or her to face at the time? I'm saying, like, who else is there that's on that babyface side that you could say, this person's on the rise. Maybe Steve Macklin, like, but that's about it. Like, there's not really many people for Kazarian to really fight with anymore. That's kind of like where we're at. We don't really have many more people for him to face. And since you've got the call your shot on another heel, like I said before, like, either that's got to go away right here, right now, so that it's no longer a factor, and then you've got to put it on Nick Nemeth, or he's got to fail and not get it, and then he's still going to probably get another chance potentially at the next pay-per-view. So why would Kazarian and Nick Nemeth go against each other? Like, that wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't work. No one would really care, and everyone would be all about Santana or whatever. And especially in like 2 days, it's like, it just doesn't make any sense. If you take the belt off of Kazarian, and you have had like Nick Nemeth be so close to calling a shot, at least you can say, oh, well, I'm calling it at Genesis or something, you know, after TNA goes off the air or whatever, you know, behind the scenes, you know, whatever it is, behind the scenes promo. Or you can have you can do the same thing of saying, okay, behind the scenes promo, and he still wants to cash it in, but Kazarian's there saying, hey, I want my rematch as well. So you get both. You get a triple threat. Bam. There you go. And as I say, I think that even if that's somewhat predictable, in some ways you are adding in these other elements. Even if they're somewhat predictable in some ways, in some forms, in some fashions, I think, again, sometimes you've just got to understand the position that you're in, read the room, so to speak, or whatever. Understand your position. Okay, this is where we're at. We've got to make a good impression. Not just say, oh, well, tune in 2 days or whatever. No, because, like, what will that mean? You know, like I said, like, Santana's said that this is his last chance, and you said if he loses this match, he's going to the back of the line. People are not going to be, like, happy with seeing him at the back of the line. You know, it's time to stand that landing and say, no, this was our thing all along. We understand that people might be miffed or pissed or whatever else about it or whatever, but we hope that people are, like, engaged enough with what we've done here to keep tuning in, because this is our guy. Yes, he's still got challenges to face or whatever else it is, and a road to go on or whatever else it is in this new role, but he is in that position. He's not just forgotten about or whatever else it is. And again, like, if you were to go down that route of saying, okay, well, now what's going to happen? Like, how are you going to get that? Like, maybe you could say, oh, a battle royal or something or whatever, I don't know. But again, that feels like you're trying too hard or whatever, you know. And then you're expecting people to give you another chance. People have continually given this show another chance. You know, this is like the 5th or 6th or 7th or maybe even 800th time that people have given TNA another chance, another time to say, okay, TNA, show me that you're actually not a carny piece of shit promotion, and that you're going to treat the fans right. That's what they want, you know. So even if it's predictable, you've got to read the room, and say, no, okay, this is what we've got to do. And honestly, like I've said this before, like this is where the rubber meets the road. This is it. Like, you've got to stick it this time. No more, like eventually, like I said, it'll take so long, if at all, that people will give you another chance after this one. You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm at with this. They've got to pull the trigger with this. There's no, like, in my mind, there's no other options. Even if they say, well, we've got a story that we want to tell or whatever else it is, no. I don't think anyone cares what story you want to tell. Give us what we want. That's it. Do what we want, because that is your ass on the line. This is what we want to see. This is who we want to see. Even if you say, oh, the casual fans or the new fans aren't going to know who Santana is or what Santana is. That's why you've got to have time to reintroduce the story, reintroduce the characters, whatever else it is, all of this stuff, especially on the night. Yes, you've got to be doing it, like they've got some of these promos and whatnot coming along now, with some of the TNA wrestlers or whatever else. But you've got to be like, okay, cool. We've got to introduce people. Like I liked the idea, or some of the ideas that were like there, of like Eric Young has his own little show, and whatever, Joe Hendry has his own little show, and whoever else has another little show, or whatever, everyone has another little show that they've got, kind of thing, that helps you kind of either connect to them specifically or connect to the other performers that are there, So, like, I often think, like, Around the Ring kind of could be in that position of, like, this is a separate little thing that we're gonna, produce just for the sake of, getting to know the wrestlers more so. And people are now going to see it, not just, it's going to be on, YouTube, or it's going to be on the TNA Plus app, or it's going to be here, it's going to be there, and it's only really for those who are real diehard fans to tune in and see, okay, who's this person, what are they really all about, etc., all that stuff, or whatever. No, it's something that anyone can see. Hey, this is this person, Mike Santana. Like, again, like maybe even string together some of those things, or put some of those things out. Like, this is a couple of interviews with Mike Santana, especially on the new network or whatever else it is. Like, hey, here he is. This is this guy. He's on TNA. He's basically the main dude. Same with Kazarian. Like, even if he's not going to be the main dude or whatever it is, it's like, cool. But it's the thing of saying, hey, people need to know who he is and what he's all about, and how has he got this belt, and why has he got this belt, and why should you care about, what's happening here tonight, or whatever. Again, engage people in what you're doing, and even if people feel like they know what's going on, hey, this is the story for this guy to finally do the thing. There's always doubt, and that's why matches are, like, so important. Like, matches need to be like that driver of, the drama. When Mike Santana's down and Kazarian's beating him up and all of this, but Santana still won't go down. He keeps fighting and he keeps coming and all of this. you know. But it seems like Kazarian's one step ahead, and all of this, like, how's Santana gonna break through, or whatever else it is, you know, like all of that stuff. And maybe even like Nick Nemeth like intentionally kind of coming down to cash in or something like that helps Santana to turn the tide or whatever else it is. So you can always do a million different things, or different things in a million different ways, or whatever else it is. But again, even if, like, I don't want to say that any babyface gets involved in this, but like maybe you should. I don't know. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, like that's one of those things of saying, well, you've got to have more on tap, you know, type thing. And that's why, again, like you're trying to load up this episode, this first episode, with your most, you know, mainstream people, the Iconics, aka the Inspiration, the Hardys, aka the Hardys. I'm not going to go through all of that, but you know what I mean. Just Dolph Ziggler, aka Nick Nemeth. Like, you know, even though he's not like slated to be on the card, it's like, yeah, but you know, people know who he is, and we, you know, he's going to be in the video packages and whatnot, so people, you know, will know, hey, he's here, or remember, hey, he's here, or whatever else it is. You know, Leon Slater, you know, even if some people don't really know who he is, like, you know, a lot of people, you know, tuning in will see, hey, this young kid who's youngest X Division champion and full of charisma and whatnot, and, you know, same sort of thing. It's like, oh, okay, cool. We're getting to see the, you know, the old school X Division type thing, where this match, you know, and, you know, great high flying and whatnot. I think somebody said, like, your opening match, maybe it should be the Hardys or whatever else it is. I don't know. That's tough, because it's like, yes, they're like the big names, but I don't know whether they should take the first match. But then again, they are so important that I think they need to be front and center pretty early on, to get people to sort of stick around and keep looking, even if like they're involved with a promo backstage with Leon saying, hey, you know, we know the pressure's on you, or whatever, and, you know, whatnot, but you've got the opening match and whatnot, so go out there and steal the show, what, you know, like, we know you can do, or whatever. Put him over a bit, you know, like, and then let him go out there and have his match, or whatever. Even having, like, Myron having made his entrance and whatnot, and then you see, like, backstage for a second, like, you know, that sort of thing. It's like, oh, okay, cool. That's another way to produce it. Like I said before, instead of like just a person makes their entrance and the commentary might talk over it, but you actually, like, if you're actually going to have a promo from somebody, it's like they're having the promo on screen while they're coming to the ring or whatever. What's this night all about? You're saving more time in showing it or saying it at the time that they're coming out, because their entrance is just their entrance at the end of the day. Yes, the commentary can say what this is about, but the character themselves sometimes needs to say these things, because that's who the audience is resonating with. The character that's on the screen, not the commentary. You know, yes, the commentary is important and whatnot, but again, you don't resonate with them as much because they're just voices and you don't really see them very much on camera. You only see the wrestlers for the most part, or the referees, or the ring and the arena and the fans on camera for the most part. Like, yes, you do see other things, but like, again, you don't really see all that stuff as much. You see it, you know, when it's like necessary to see it. So yeah, but that's where I'm at with this. I know you guys feel kind of the same way, or at least I hope you do, and think the same way. But yeah, I don't want them to be too predictable in their presentation sometimes. But this night, I feel like they can be very predictable with a lot of the outcomes of a lot of the matches. That's fine. You want to send the crowd home happy, this is the one of the nights to do it. Because this, again, like a few matches that go the way of the heels just to not be like so super predictable or whatever else it is, that's fine as well. But like mostly like if the heels get the upper hand or whatever else it is, it's like, okay, cool, but the babyface has got the upper hand at the end of it or something like that or whatever else it was. You know, this is one of the few times that you get to say, let's reintroduce ourselves to a new audience and let's get it off on the right foot. If you don't do that, I think like you're gonna lose more of your audience for a longer period of time. You don't want to have to struggle for another 10, 15 years or whatever it is, trying to convince people to give you one more chance. You know, like, that's not acceptable, I don't think. It's not worth it to just be like, we screwed you over, ha ha ha. Oh, what's that? We're almost out of business again? Well, shit, maybe we should have given the people what they wanted. You know what I mean? So that's where that is. But anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed. And I hope that you will join me again in another one.